So there's this parenting hack that I discovered called the Get Along shirt. It's really stupid. It's stupid. Because you're tying kids together and forcing them to get along, which isn't going to work because they're invading each other's personal. Oh, yeah, by the way, take a big giant shirt, write our Get Along shirt on it, and then force the two kids who are fighting with each other to wear it together, like they're stuck together. I think that's so stupid. It's not going to teach them anything, and they're not going to resolve their issue. They're just going to be annoyed and in each other's personal bubbles. When you're angry, you have a bigger personal bubble than when you're not. So, they're just making them more frustrated than anything. In fact, it's making them mad at you. So being mad at each other, they won't be mad at each other anymore. They're just going to be pissed at you. And that's not going to resolve anything. Now, what my mom did, she had two kind of methods of this from when we were little and when we got a little older. So when we were little, she would have this thing, the double time out. So basically, my brother and I, because he's only a year older than me, so we were close in age, so, we'd be playing together a lot, getting fights a lot over stupid little things and whatever else. So what would happen is if we got into a fight, and we were, yelling and fighting with each other, and so my mom would put us both in timeout together, but, there was this little, by our back door, there was a little bit of a step up, it was like a little square, and we would have to be on that square. And so we could both sit on it, facing apart from each other, not looking at each other, not seeing each other, not listening to each other, so we could cool off and have our own personal space to do that if we needed to. But what she did was really clever. She said, you can only get out of timeout once you both say that the other can get out. So basically, my brother's name is Luke and I was called Katie when I was a kid. I would have to say, Luke, you're allowed out of timeout, and my brother would have to say, Katie, you're allowed out of timeout, or else we'd both be stuck in there. If one of us said the other one could get out, but the other one didn't, we would both be stuck in there. And it worked so well because we thought we were being, because I was little, I was like 6 and under, we thought we were being so freaking clever because we were like, we can, we can outsmart our mom, she thinks she's being just like big bad mom putting us in trouble, and we're so smart, like, you're allowed out, and then we wouldn't be mad at each other anymore, though. We wouldn't be fighting anymore. We'd be happy and silly, and we'd be co-conspirators, and we thought we were being so clever and everything else. But here's the biggest thing. We weren't screaming and fighting and everything else, and my mom could do whatever the hell she was doing in peace. And we were playing along, getting along, because we thought we were so clever. We rarely got into fights for like the next while after that, because we were like, working together and everything else. But it really worked for bigger problems too, because I remember one time my brother broke my favorite toy, and I was so mad at him. And so, we got into a fight. Mom put us in the double timeout. And so then my brother was like, okay, Katie, you're allowed out of the timeout. And then I was still sitting there all grumpy. And then, Katie, you're supposed to, I was like, I'm still mad at you, Luke. You're still in timeout. And then eventually I calmed down and I reconciled. And I was like, I don't want to be in timeout anymore. And so I said, okay, Luke, you're allowed out of timeout. And we went off to play separately. But, I mean, we weren't mad or fighting or anything anymore. And we were playing in peace. And my mom could continue doing whatever the hell she was doing in peace. And then as we got older and we were old enough to read and write, which she would do whenever we got into a squabble and be like, well, he did this, well, she said that, because she would always say there's 3 parts to every story: his story, her story, and the truth. And so what she would do is first we had to write down our personal accounts of the story, but we had to use I statements, no blaming. It had to be, I felt like this when this happened, I felt like this when you said this, blah, 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 blah. And then separately, and then we'd have to go together in a room with one piece of paper and one pen or pencil or whatever, and then we would have to write one account of what happened. And so that was her story, his story, and the truth. And we weren't allowed out of that room or to do anything else until we finished writing the story. And that taught us problem-solving skills and how to, because everyone's going to have their own different feelings or opinions on how things happened, and it helped us to actually deal with the problems and all this other stuff. And it was really, really effective to get us to stop fighting and to get us in adulthood. It helped find as a teenager, I kind of forgot all these lessons. Another one that she would always say is HIII. How important is it? It's an acronym. and everything else. And as a teenager, I was ignoring all these rules because, fuck you, everything you said, Mom. But then I got to an adult, and I took a lot of these lessons to heart. Like, if I get into a squabble over the internet, for example, is the biggest example, and saying people are having all these strong opinions, and I'll try to have a decent debate or argument with them, but if I see that nothing I'm saying is getting through to them, I'm like, how important is it? Nothing I say is gonna change their mind or their way of thinking. There's no point in continuing this. It's just a waste of time. I'm not saying you're right, I'm not saying I'm right, I'm just saying this is a waste of time. There's nothing we say to each other is going to change anyone's opinion, so why bother? Goodbye argument, move on with their life, because it's not important enough. How important is it? And when dealing with conflicts with people in real life and everything else, using the I statements and the shit sandwich is another one. But yeah, like, trying to come up with, like that, instead of just tying your kids together and everything else. There's a site that I saw that was saying why it's a bad idea, and I'll put the link to it, because you have to teach your children actual problem solving skills and everything else, and you have to sit down with them and say, try to do that. But that can be exhausting for a parent. Like, as someone who is babysat a lot, like, I know it's not the same as parenting by any means, but I can get having to babysit all day. Like, I was a nanny for my my aunt and uncle because they have 5 kids. And I would oftentimes nanny their 2 youngest, who are a set of 3-year-old twins. Holy crap. And the older kids are always fighting and everything else. So I'd be nannying all day, and I'm like, oh my god. So I can tell how exhausting it is as a parent to have to solve every single little squabble that they have. But what's effective with what my mom did is that while we're solving our problems by ourselves and learning the things to solve the tools and everything else to solve problems, she can be doing whatever the fuck she wants. She doesn't have to do anything. It's like, except for like hand us the papers and the pens and tell us give us the instructions. She has time to herself. She has peace. So it was clever. It works out perfectly for everyone, and it's not exhaustive for the parent. In fact, it's great because you get a little break from parenting, and it teaches the kids real life problem solving skills. So yeah, like, if you want a parenting hack, there's that right there is what I think you should teach your kids. Actual stuff, instead of just thinking about what's good for you. Think about what's good for them, and keep in mind, what you learn as a kid stays with you your entire life. I remember things I've learned as a child better than I remember things I learned as a teenager or an adult. And those things were ingrained in my mind until it took me a hell of a lot longer to unlearn something I learned as a child than any other time in my life. Because what happens, because the thing is that your memory is your strongest when you're a kid. So what are you teaching your children? Keep that in mind, because that will affect the kind of person they will become. Thanks for watching.